Hi, everybody. Thank you. Excited to be here. So, I think that's a really excellent segue into some of the topics that we wanted to talk about today, specifically something we're calling intelligent automation. But I think more holistically, we really wanted to talk about how mobile and specifically smartphones kind of play a role in the larger contact center ecosystem. So I've got a few facts here on the screen, but specifically, I think we can all agree that mobile phones are playing an increasingly large role, and an important role at that, in the general support ecosystem. So, we have facts like 81% of adults own a smartphone. And I think, the fact that we, for instance, can use multi-factor authentication so effectively is a really good example of how businesses are leveraging the fact that we have our phones with us at all times. And I know personally I can't leave a room for more than 5 minutes without realizing that my phone's not in my back pocket. And I think that that's a really valuable piece of data when understanding, what sorts of demographics we're talking to. This is especially true for millennials and Gen Z. Not only are they kind of born and raised with phones in their hands, but more specifically, data is showing that they are preferring to interact with their mobile smartphones to kind of interact with the brands that they love. So think about Amazon, ordering groceries, ordering products. Maybe they're on Facebook. They'd much rather be on the mobile app than they would the desktop version of the application. And that's very, very, very powerful. Additionally, when we're comparing different channels, analog versus, a more traditional, or a more traditional analog device versus a mobile device, there's very little that a mobile phone can do or cannot do that a desktop computer can. So a good example would be emails, texting, video calling, browsing the web, shopping, scheduling meetings. I can do all of that from my cell phone. And it's just as easy to do with that cell phone as it is with the desktop. In fact, I'd argue it's slightly more convenient because I don't need to be at home or work or in a Starbucks. I can use my data connection to kind of do all of those things on the go. And that's a really important piece of data because we are walking around with these supercomputers in our pockets. And data is showing that we would prefer to use them to interact with different brands. To put some monetary value behind this, there's some statistics on here that are showing, nearly 9% of all retail sales globally are occurring online. And then we already know that, by 2020, which, believe it or not, is only about 7 months away, we're expecting 25% of the retail market to be occurring from millennials. The exact demographic we just said very much prefers to interact with brands via their mobile devices. So this really has companies thinking, how can we support this trend? And I think, there's another point that I want to bring up before we sort of segue into what are the action items here, which is the more traditional outlook of a contact center is what I would call a cost center. It's going to cost me money to, staff agents. It's cost me money to buy computers and headsets. How much money will it cost? But I think that mindset is shifting. We're moving in the direction of how a premier customer support experience can be a for-profit strategy. And I think that building brand loyalty is a really, really, really critical piece of this entire puzzle. So the question is, how do we leverage this information that we know about millennials, about mobile users, and how do we continue to build brand loyalty? So that's a little bit about what I'd like to get into today. So I'm going to throw out some very big buzzwords here, but I'd like to kind of break it down as simply as I can and talk about, different ways and different approaches of attacking this problem. So machine learning and intelligent automation, I think, are critical, but I think it's really important to qualify all of this by saying, machine learning and automation does not just mean chatbots. And I think that that's where people's minds tend to go when they're talking about the contact center space. But this means really so much more than that. And in my opinion, what it really kind of boils down to are two concepts. One, data and understanding that data, and then automation. And automation kind of has several subcategories, and we'll go into those as well. So from a data perspective, what I really mean to say is that companies and brands are asking questions. They're asking questions like, what is the most common support issue that I'm getting? What's the average number of support calls for that my customers are asking? When are they asking them? What channels do my customers prefer? Do I have certain agents that are better at answering certain types of questions? And I think just the fact that those questions are being asked proves that companies are really looking to take the next step forward there. But perhaps more interesting would be the automation piece of the puzzle. And there really are a lot of tasks during the day, like things like ticket creation, ticket closing, sending transcripts. Maybe I need to send an email to follow up with the customer, authenticating a user. Am I who I say I am? Those are all very good things that need to happen over the course of the agent and user lifecycle, but none of them actually have to do with solving the issue that the customer is writing in about. None of them actually add to the end user's happiness, which I think, at the end of the day is the goal of Premier Customer Support. How do I let the end user hang up with that sense of brand loyalty, thinking that was a really great experience. I would definitely, buy from this company again. So one thing we can do is we can plan to automate a lot of those processes, the ticket creation, the email sending, the transcript sending, the follow-up. A lot of those are very low-hanging fruit to kind of automate. And then not only does that free up more time for the agent to actually solve issues, but what it does is, and I think that this will be an interesting point as well, is it actually gets the agent spending time doing the things that they signed up to do. An agent didn't sign up to kind of do more administrative work. They signed up because they want to help people. So there's an interesting component to this whole conversation, which is making improvements here actually improves the agent experience, which, if you are talking about dollars and cents of running a call center, I think it's a really critical piece when you're talking about churn and turnover and hiring and training as well. So I'd like to talk a little bit about this concept of intelligent automation, because that's something that we're talking a lot about at UJET. But I think that holistically, what we need to be asking ourselves is, given that we know mobile is incredibly important and we need to provide premier support that mirrors, where end users, are pushing towards, what channels do they prefer? And we're starting to ask questions, and we're automating a lot of the repetitive tasks. I think that there's an area of opportunity to automate a lot of the more complicated tasks. So a really good example would be, let's say I'm a customer and I call in about an issue. If I could speak, as I'm waiting to talk to an agent and communicate that I'm calling about a billing issue. Under the normal set of circumstances, if the agent doesn't know how to answer that question, what they need to do is put the customer on hold and they raise their hand and they wait for a manager to come over and, explain the situation or advise on how to, what the protocol is. But if we were able to kind of take that natural language processing and artificial intelligence and surface 10 relevant articles on, I can see that this customer has questions about his or her invoice. I can put the information in the hands of the customer immediately, giving them the ability to kind of troubleshoot things faster without the very jarring experience of being put on hold for, 5-10 minutes or whatever it may be to kind of hunt down a difficult question. Another thing that's kind of worth talking about is, we really need to sit down and ask ourselves certain questions. Did I even answer the customer's ultimate question? Did they understand it effectively? Would they have preferred to handle it themselves? And this concept of self-service comes into play as well. How can we surface very relevant self-help articles? And how do I know I'm surfacing the correct articles? I know, there's always going to be a time and a place to talk to an agent, but I think that, putting the power in the hands of the end user to kind of find the answer they're looking for with as few clicks as possible is going to be really, really critical. And then I think that there's a really interesting concept that has to do with leveraging the power of the actual mobile device that we talked about at the beginning of this conversation. So, specifically, smartphones can text, take pictures, videos, screenshots, all of these things. And we can update those, the agents with that information very real time. So a really good example, I think, is the authentication piece of the puzzle. If I can use the facial recognition feature or the fingerprint feature of my phone to authenticate who I am, and that's good enough for my bank, it certainly should be good enough for, the retail partners that I'm working with. If I'm buying something and they sent me shoes in the wrong color, I think that would be a really good example of an instance where a customer could take a picture and upload that ticket or that information directly into the ticket automatically. And so there are lots of these pieces that are more complicated in the entire ecosystem that can be simplified with this type of intelligent automation. So I think I want to tie this all together in a way that sort of brings it back to the original point, which is, how do we take the fact that we live in a very mobile-centric world, and more and more users are expecting very seamless support through those mobile devices. And that can be multi-channel. That does not necessarily mean chat, and it does not necessarily mean mobile web. It could mean a PSTN phone call, but that's still happening with my mobile device. We're asking ourselves, how can we leverage the abilities of these mobile devices to make better experiences? And a lot of that has to do with things we've talked about, sending photos and videos and screenshots. A lot of it has to do with the agent side of things, right? So surfacing articles, surfacing information as quickly as possible. It's about having as little context loss as possible as we kind of move from contact to contact. And ultimately, I think the kicker here is that a lot of the companies that have mobile devices have quite a lot of information about the customer in the apps themselves. So if we use Amazon as an example again, I could, for instance, order a pair of shoes. That's all being logged in the app itself. Amazon already knows that about me. When I call in to Amazon and I want to talk to a representative, there's not a main reason that we would need to lose that additional context as well. The agent could very clearly identify, okay, his name's Connor. He ordered a pair of brown shoes. He's telling me that they came in blue instead. What's the fastest way we can refund him and send him on his happy way? Well, one, he could send a picture, and within 10 seconds, it could be uploaded directly and show me proof that those shoes are in fact in, the wrong color. And I know it's Connor because he's facially recognized by his mobile device as well. And I think you kind of take, very painful parts of the experience where I might otherwise need to take a picture, upload it to my email it to the agent. I need to wait 5 minutes before it arrives, and then they open it that way. So holistically, what we're really trying to do is marry two concepts. One is, we know that the way of the future is by supporting mobile devices, and we think that means a few different things. It could mean leveraging the SMS feature of the phone. It could mean using the data that customers have about end users and putting that context directly in front of the agents right away. So there is a more seamless transition. But I think, at its core, what it really means is not leaving the mobile app experience that we've seen end users value so much. And ultimately, improvements in these categories are designed to increase brand loyalty. And I think, as we're all very much aware, brand loyalty and word of mouth it can make or break, partnerships and ultimately brand success. And I think that that's, one thing UJET is really striving to do with its customers is maintain their brand loyalty with their customers as well. And that's it from my end. Thank you.